Just 6. I'll call the meeting to order and recognize that we meet on the traditional territory of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. With respect to the agenda, there are no changes.
We have just under agenda item I4, the late Chair report for PAPCOM meeting.
Yeah, there's no changes to the agenda. There's a late item for I4. Okay, so with that, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Runge, anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion is passed. And adoption of the regular minutes of June 2nd. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Roodenburg, Councillor Goulet, anyone opposed? Okay, it's my pleasure to finally announce, even though Canada has not finally announced, the Prime Minister hasn't actually blessed and sanctioned that Darren Dodge is our new staff sergeant. And we've actually been sort of working on that presumption for a little bit as we've tried to shove the RCMP to get a press release out the door. So congratulations, Darren.
Thank you, sir.
Looking forward to working with you. And we've asked Darren to give us a little bit of a kind of an overview of the priorities that he'll be bringing to the detachment. And Byron and I have had a couple of conversations with him about putting his own stamp on things. And so this is Darren's opportunity to do that and then take some questions from council. So
sure,
the floor is yours.
I don't plan to take too long. We'll just touch on the 4 main points of the strategic priorities this year with the detachment. First and foremost, accountability and good governance. Second of all, crime reduction with an aim to reducing property crime. Third, enhancing public safety with an eye to more traffic enforcement. And 4, organizational excellence, which has to do in this case with quality of investigations. Now, accountability and good governance, what we mean by that is we'll ensure that our priorities are in alignment with all of our partners, the City of Quesnel, the District, the 4 First Nations, and our partner agencies in the community. And secondly, we'll continue to participate in these partnerships that continue to contribute to the greater good for all of the citizens of Quesnel. The Interagency Committee we belong to, the Community Caring for People with Addictions Committee, or its offshoot, whatever that turns out to be. As well, the Good Neighbor Agreements. We're partners with the city and with Seasons House, and we're partners with the city and Elliott Street when that starts as well. So we'll continue to be part of that. And we also partner with Northern Health for various amounts of things, and I'll get to that in a bit. The second issue, and one that comes up every meeting I'm at, is our second priority, crime reduction with an eye to reducing property crime. The city gifted us 2 extra positions, funding for 2 people last fall, and we told the city when we received the funding that instead of throwing them into the pool of investigators that we have, we would specifically designate them to full-time crime reduction positions. So since how that unit works is that they identify prolific offenders in the community and they monitor them, and as per the provincial guidelines. We actually approach these prolific offenders. We tell them they've been identified as prolific offenders. We offer to work with them so that they can stop their life of crime. And if they choose not to, they are a priority for us. We will do that through various means, uniform disruption, as in we'll be out there in uniform, and we'll also use other investigative techniques. And as we move forward, we'll be partnering with the Caribou Regional Crime Reduction Team out of Williams Lake. It's a regional crime reduction team, and their resources are available to us to use, and we'll be doing that. The third issue, and another thing that gets brought up to me all the time in meetings, is traffic enforcement. We as management will ensure that all of our members, we have quite a few new members, are fully trained in all equipment so they can perform all the ranges of traffic enforcement that they're required to do. Impaired driving continues to be a priority in this community and others. There has been a decrease, but it's still a concern for us. And in partnership with North District Traffic Services, which has 6 members in this town, we will work with them as the year on various projects in high traffic areas, problem intersections, and school zones. School zones are always a big start of the year when kids come back and to start and end of school days. So we'll be doing that as well. And fourth and finally, the strategic priority that we've decided to concentrate on this year as well is called organizational excellence. And that's in regards to quality of investigations. And through enhanced supervision and mentorship, investigations will be reviewed and assessed on a regular basis to ensure that we're continuing to produce quality work, which will lead to more reports to Crown Counsel, more charges approved, and more convictions in court. A particular emphasis this year will be on drug investigations. Drug investigations can be quite complicated, and we're very fortunate we have some members that have quite a bit of experience with that, and we'll be relying on them as we move forward to mentor our newer members. So those are our 4 strategic priorities this year that I've outlined. There's 3 additional items that I'd just like to bring your attention to because I think they're good news. 2 are good news and 1's kind of concerning. I'll leave that till the end. The first thing is the crime reduction unit. Hopefully all of you have read the press release we did 2 weeks ago. Our crime reduction unit has been operational since February of this year, 2 members. And during that time, they've done phenomenal work. We've arrested 33 people for various offenses, and they've recovered stolen vehicles, 11 drug seizures, and they brought 20 people to court on new charges. And also this past 4 months, pardon me, they've been involved in the execution of 6 search warrants. To give you an idea of what crime reduction and having full-time crime reduction members can do for this community is last week we had a high-profile offender in town. On Wednesday, the crime reduction unit came to work, decided to target that person because we had information he was breaching his conditions. And before noon, they'd arrested the person. He was released the next day in court, and knowing full well that he would breach his conditions again, they targeted again Friday morning, arrested him again, and now he's currently being held in the Prince George Regional Correctional Center. We don't have the time or resources on the general duty side to be that target specific. We do have the time and resources in crime reduction to do that. And that's, the city, population of the city contributed to the survey, and you guys approved the funding for that, and that's made a big difference. And hopefully as we move forward, it will make a bigger difference. The second thing that's sort of an unheard of we don't brag about it enough, but last spring, we started the Mobile Crisis Intervention Team. The Mobile Crisis Intervention Team consists of 1 police officer partnered with a psychiatric nurse. And they go out on the streets either once or twice a week for 4 hours, and they seek out those clients that are causing the police or Northern Health high levels of service. They're our regular clients. We're always having to see them anyway. So we create a list, and those 2 people go out and find them and see what they can do for them. Since April, they've actually made 259 street contacts. They've actually made 167 home visits, and they've made 177 referrals for everything from medical appointments, housing, food security, and drug treatment. And this is all done between 4 to 8 hours a week for our high value clients, the people that cause a lot of time and resources. We think it's great bang for our buck to put a police officer out there 4 to 8 hours a week to try to make sure these people are attending their medical appointments, or the psychiatric nurse actually gives medication sometimes. If she's in contact with these doctors and these people may not make their appointments, she provides medication on the street to these people. So we think it's been a great success. Having said that, I said the third one was going to be a bit of a challenge. So here's an interesting one. It sort of goes hand in hand with MCIT. In the year 2019, we had 719 calls for service involving mental health issues in this town. That worked out to 6% of all of our calls for service last year had some element of mental health involved. This year alone, up until May 31st of this year, we've already had 504 calls for service involving mental health. That's trending right now at 12% of our calls for service. So those are issues, that's an issue that's alive. We're alive to it in this community. People are calling us all the time Today, we did not have a call. I was kind of waiting to kind of give an anecdotal story about today. We didn't actually have a call, but sometimes we have 2 calls a day, at least, in regards to mental health issues in this town. So we are partnering with Mental Health, Northern Health, the Quest unit, and throughout the year, we also have what's called community care conferences. And that's where we meet with the physician of specific people and their mental health worker. And we try to come up with some sort of solution why these people are falling through the cracks or whatever. But that's sort of a thumbnail sketch of what your police are doing right now. And it's a lot of service to the community as opposed to just criminal code investigations. The way it's trending now with mental health calls, we could potentially have over 1,000 calls this year with mental health issues. So that's where we are right now. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? I have Councillor Elliott and Councillor Paul. Councillor Elliott, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Darren, congratulations on the posting. I'm excited that you got it, and it's good news for our community. The first question I had, you mentioned the CRD has a regional task force. How often do we actually access that for our area here?
When we have a project in mind, we will reach out to them and we will task them with assisting with us. I don't have the numbers with it. In fact, today they were tasking them with something today specifically, but I don't have the specific numbers, sir, in front of me. But we do reach out to them when we have a project in mind.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for the numbers and the updates. It's extremely important, I think, and I love the numbers specifically from the 2 new members that are getting targeted on the prolific offenders. This is something that communities really wanted, so I'm glad that you're focused on that. And really, a message from me, and I think so many others out there, is just thank you to you and all of the members for everything that you're doing to keep our communities safe. It's a crazy time in this world right now. There's a lot of pushback on different things that I'm not going to get involved with right now. But the job you do is so extremely important. When something goes down and the rest of us are running away, you guys and gals are going right in there. It's so appreciated, and I'd like it if you took that back to your members for us. Thanks again.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Paul and then Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Darren, congratulations. You know, in view of the fact that, as you said earlier in your presentation, that we have a number of new members, it's good to see that someone with some Quesnel experience and some Quesnel background is cycled through to become our commanding officer. You guys are doing good work, and as was said previously, these are very trying times, and you guys are doing good work well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll echo what my 2 colleagues said. Darren, I am so pleased that you're in the position with not only with the work that we've interacted at City Council, but with the work at the Downtown Association. We are so appreciative of the efforts that our detachment has made to make, frankly, business work better in our community, and of course, providing absolutely the necessary support to keep everyone safe. So thank you, and I really look forward to working with you in the coming years. Darren, regarding your point discussing the mobile crisis intervention team, it seems to me, and this isn't the first time I've heard about it, we've talked about it a few times, it seems to me that for the minimal effort or the minimal investment in time, 4 to 8 hours per week, is there any possibility of expanding that, as it seems that it's making a huge impact with vulnerable people in our community?
We looked at that, and in discussions with Northern Health, our partners will have to work with them. Currently, the police officer that's assigned to MCIT is also our community resource officer. So he offers services to the schools, to the community, to other places as well throughout the year. That is something, in fact, we were talking about this morning, something we'll have to discuss with Northern Health. We do see a huge benefit to the relationships the police officer and the psychiatric nurse are making in the community are phenomenal. And our members on regular duty reach out to those two on a regular basis to try and get assistance. So that is something we're looking at, Councillor Vic, and we'll be moving forward and trying to move forward with that in the future.
Okay, so before I go to Councillor Roodenburg, just a quick comment on the question Councillor Vic asked. And I think it's a combination of the RCMP resources and Northern Health resources that are the kind of, we have limiting factors on both sides of that. But I think the other thing, Darren, is that that relationship also expedites sometimes the transfer of an individual who's apprehended under the Mental Health Act to a clinician.
Yeah,
and stops our RCMP officers from having to sit for hours in emergency. Is that correct?
absolutely. That's an added benefit to that as well. Yes.
So one of the things I think we need to talk at our next PSP, we've got one coming up after next council meeting, is the point that you raise, Councillor Vic, is if that's a resource that seems to be working, what do we need to do to affect it working at an even higher level? As the mental health calls go up, can we mount a response to that as opposed to, oh my God, you know, this is just getting worse? And it really fits in with this whole defund the police campaign. I think at the heart of the defund the police campaign is we need more resources for these kinds of things so you don't end up in extremis. So rather than defund the RCMP, I think we need to be looking at how do we match RCMP resources with more resources on mental health and addiction side of things and more community resources. So I'm going to make it as one of the agenda items for our PSP meeting coming up so that we actually address some of the concerns and issues that are being raised today. So Councillor Roodenburg.
Thank you. And congratulations, Mr. Dodge. It would have looked kind of funny you jumping out of the box, by the way. You know, the benefits of your MCIT team is absolutely amazing. When you look at the bang you get for 48 hours a week, 4 to 8 hours a week is absolutely amazing. When you look at the interactions that you have, and this is just since April, these numbers you're telling us, right?
Of last 2019. I'm sorry, 2019.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. Sorry.
But it's just phenomenal, right? And when you think about like even the referrals, that's 177 referrals that wouldn't have happened if you didn't have that team on the streets. And that's 177 issues that potentially have been resolved and now are not part of the problem again and again and again, which we often see with a lot of our people who have mental health issues, etc. So along the lines of what the mayor said, you know, the benefits of that particular team and the questions from Councillor Vic around the funding with other, you know, trying to increase the funding of other resources. And you're right, it is about that whole defunding conversation. It's not about taking away the funds. For me, it's about increasing funds where they're needed. And when you talk about where this trend is going, you know, the 2020 trend could double from what you had last year.
Yes.
I definitely think that is a very good conversation to have at the next policing meeting. And your 4 goals that you've got for the year, I mean, that's what people, you know, you've listened to the conversations over the past couple of years. You've heard the concerns around property crime and traffic enforcement. So, you know, how you tie in with the accountability and good governance piece. It looks like you guys are you guys are doing well, and I think that our community is served well by you. So as Councillor Elliott said, say thank you to the rest of the crew there because they are appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Councillor Paul?
Yeah, sorry for a second time, but a question came to light in view of Councillor Vic and Councillor Roodenburg's comments, and that is with regard to the MCIT, the mental health team. And Darren, you mentioned that the calls for service have increased. I would presume that that increase is in part COVID driven. Would I be right?
Not necessarily. We have not seen a drastic increase, sir, in calls for service because of that. Because we're not clinicians or diagnosticians, we don't really know why people are having mental health crisis at all. So we're not necessarily the right people to answer that question. But definitely there's been a spike. We actually had a quiet period of time for the first 2 weeks of March, but after that we've been back to business as usual, as they say. So.
And Councillor Paul, just so that we're clear, because I think everything can be blamed on COVID, this has been a trend line that year over year has been increasing and sometimes dramatically. So, you know, I think that we need to parse out what's going on just now, but it is a trend line, I'd say over probably the last 10 years, Darren, where year over year it's been.
Definitely the police involvement in mental health calls has increased exponentially in the last 2 years.
Okay. So thank you. So Darren, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to the big seat.
Yep.
Put your stamp on things because we're going to put our stamp on you. So you know that that's your only deflection point as to your team there. So just as the other councillors have indicated, though, I think on behalf of council, we appreciate the detachment and all it does. So please send that back to everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Look forward. Hopefully you're going to join us next week.
Yep.
We've got the delegation.
Absolutely.
And then we'll have the PSP after that. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Feel free to go and do some real stuff. Not that we don't do real stuff, right, Council? Okay, moving on to the agenda. The Cariboo Regional District, as you can see, not much from the report, just continuing on with business. Council should be aware the first face-to-face but socially distancing meeting of the Cariboo Regional District will be occurring on, there's a committee of the whole meeting Thursday afternoon, and then Friday, a regular Regional Hospital District board meeting. What they've done, though, in order to accommodate social distancing in the board meeting room is that they've kind of divided the board into those that will still remain either dialing in or coming in by video because there'll be fewer of them, and those in the room. So we'll see how that goes. But they're starting on the slow march back to trying to get back to normal business. Of note, on the Thursday meeting, the committee of the whole meeting will be the discussion of a regional parks and trails tax function. And if it's the entire Cariboo Regional District, and if the board desires to do that, it doesn't require referendum because it's a full taxation across the entire regional district. And that would resolve some of our issues of trying to develop trails outside of the recreational boundaries. So my hope is that that conversation goes well and that the CRD moves on that path, because it would make us less dependent on grant funding to both build and maintain trail systems. And those trail system desires are throughout the Cariboo and very good opportunities for partnerships with First Nations. So that's kind of an upcoming piece. Are there any questions on the notes from the previous meeting of the CRD? If not, that's an information only. With respect to the Finance Committee, you'll see the report here. The two main items from that report are on our agenda tonight, so I'm not going to spend any time on them. You'll be able to dig into them. The one, though, background piece for the discussion on commercial cardboard is that we did have a pretty robust discussion about implementing a fee on commercial cardboard immediately upon instituting a new process for handling cardboard. As council will know, and you'll have seen in the report, that commercial cardboard is becoming problematic for us, and we need to, at a minimum, move towards cost recovery for handling that material. And on the recommendation of the Finance Committee, because of the situation with COVID, because we chose to stay with our budget and the tax increases as proposed pre-COVID, And because it's a midstream, potential midstream fee increase, the Finance Committee's recommendation is that we waive any fee increases until the 2021 budget cycle, when we can add it to our normal master fee bylaw, give proper notice, and then add that on. So the timing of that for commercial folks, of course, is in conjunction with getting out of commercial garbage pickup and incremental costs associated with that. So you'll see in here that the recommendation from the Finance Committee is to take that course of action. I'm not going to ask us to do anything with this report. It's for information only, because the two items are actually on the agenda tonight, and that's where the substantive debate should be. So I suggest we just wait until the two reports come forward to have our conversation, unless there's something I said that somebody, you know, has taken great offense to and needs to correct a record or something. I see smiles all around, so we can move on, okay? So next would be Executive Committee, Councillor Roodenburg.
Thank you. So you have the report before you. I think one of the more interesting pieces out of this report is around the food hub and potential next steps. You'll notice that staff and Director Reid have met with CNC to discuss an opportunity to have the food hub as an independent business operating out of the CNC campus. There is recognition that there would be some construction needed to create a functional space of sufficient size. And also recognizing that CNC would still need to be using the space. So there are a few issues that are being talked about, and staff will be engaging further to determine if this proposal will work. So, and that report will come back to Econ. You'll see there a little blurb on the gold pan refurbishment. We've talked about this ad nauseum. You'll notice that the relocation of the pan will wait until the new gateway signages are ready to be installed where the gold pan is currently sitting, and also talked a little bit about how we could increase the interpretive signage around the gold pan when it is installed. If there are no questions, there are also no recommendations in this report.
Just a couple of quick updates from me. I see Councillor Paul's hand. Hopefully you're not going to take us down the rabbit hole of gold pan. The couple of quick updates. On the upcoming community engagement, we did say at ECOM that we may want to consider that as an alternate communications piece. So we did meet with all the communications team today. We had a communications meeting. And through the summer, we're going to be putting together a pretty substantive householder that will hopefully, in lieu of us being able to meet face-to-face with people as we had wanted to do this year, will give people at least a sense of all of the things that are going on in the community, what the new official community plan means to them, both, you know, generally and, you know, if we can describe kind of in their neighborhoods, what we're doing on the transition strategy, what's happening with secondary suites, like all of the initiatives going on. So the staff are going to work on drafting something of substance and try and aim for late August to have the draft with a view to getting it out second week of September. We'll use social media to promote that something's coming so that people actually look for it as opposed to just turfing it with flyers. And I think it can be something that we really kind of dig in and talk about both the transition strategy, our housing initiative, as well as the OCP. So that was an outcome of ECOM where we took that to communications and did that work on it. And I think that that should be really good for the community. And then with respect to the food hub, we should know with respect to the partnership with CNC, there was an update as of today that the executive committee of the college will be meeting, and it will be on their agenda, and I believe that meeting is tomorrow. So we'll know kind of how quickly we can advance the food hub as a partnership with them, potentially at the college. We don't want to trap that initiative into, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but the kind of the bureaucratic machinations of the college, because it does, and large institutions, it takes time to kind of move things forward. And of course, because this is grant funding, we have some hard timelines that we have to work with. So we should be able to kind of work that through. But council should be aware that because we're having some issues with 7-Eleven, another big corporation and bureaucracy, and because of some of our concerns around CNC and timing, you'll see going out to the public domain another call for expressions of interest for other real estate that may be available for this. So in order to kind of cover the timing, we need to actually go back and kind of take a look at what properties may be made available. So don't be surprised that you see something that seems to be counter to this. Okay, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, fair warning. This is about the gold pan, but it's not a rabbit hole. And that is, I'm happy to see that ECOM is recommending that the paint and color scheme be as close to the original as possible. And I'd like to suggest that maybe ECOM or whoever look at tying our heritage based in gold to our new branding. It's in our nature. And think about the fact that...
We're not going to get into a branding discussion, Councillor Paul. This is an update on the move of the gold pan. You're not going to deflect this onto another agenda item. Okay?
Can I make a little suggestion, please?
Yeah, you can make the suggestion to the executive committee chair, who can then make it a proper posted agenda item for executive committee and then bring it forward to council in an appropriate manner. You're just getting an update now on what we're doing to facilitate moving the gold pan. We're not going back and revisiting branding.
Okay,
Okay.
I just have an idea how we can tie branding into it.
Yeah, well, you had lots of opportunity to do that, Councillor Paul, during the branding exercise itself. So we're not going back and revisiting the branding exercise. This conversation is done. Any other comments on the ECOM report? Okay, seeing none. Again, I think we need to get in the habit of not adopting reports. De facto, the report is adopted when we adopt the agenda. And so it just, for ease of business, we can just move on unless there's actual recommendations. Okay, and then Councillor Elliott on policy and bylaw.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is from the Policy and Bylaw Committee meeting on June the 9th. A few different topics discussed, and I apologize for this being a late agenda item. It's just the way it was. Role of the corporate officer at council meetings was one of the topics, and the role of the corporate officer is important when it comes to being the keeper of good faith and keeping council accountable to the code of conduct and council meeting norms. There are a couple of specific issues of concern. Council members wanting to discuss issues that are not on the agenda, and council members not having read or being prepared for a meeting. In council meeting norms, it is clearly stated that council members will be fully prepared, having read all background material. Any member of council that is not fully prepared and having read the full agenda wastes the time of council and staff and disrespects those that have worked hard to be properly prepared. It may be necessary for members of council to be directed from the CO or staff to the exact page of the agenda if the information is clearly in that agenda. There may also be a need for the CO to help with point of order and conduct in chambers if the situation calls for it. This responsibility can and should also fall on the role of individual council members if a member of council is out of line. The second topic, one of them is housing initiatives, communication work plan. Unfortunately, we were informed that Lindsay Allman will be leaving us as the community housing planner. Good luck to Lindsay, and thanks for all her hard work. She's done a remarkable job, and I'm sure she's going to be successful in any direction that she goes. And Tanya and I have already had discussions on where we're going to be going in the future as far as a planner. There's been a lot of good work done by the communications department as they have redone the city's building and development web page with information on housing initiatives for the public. Some of these topics are getting started, building permits, application forms and guides, accessory dwelling units, buying and leasing property, planning and housing and initiatives, and mapping. We've been wanting to communicate directly with developers, et cetera, the public, with an outreach program, outreach campaign, and information sessions, all of which have unfortunately been put on hold because of the obvious. These next steps will include communication and outreach concerning accessory dwelling units. Realtors, developers, mortgage brokers, et cetera, will be made aware of the changes and opportunities. There will also be an e-survey named The Suite Life in Quesnel for stakeholders to make all aware of new policies and information. More work is underway, and I will provide you more information as soon as possible. We had one recommendation coming out of this meeting, and it's concerning the role of the corporate officer at council meetings. Approved by consensus that the role of the corporate officer around advising the chair of when the rules of order are not being adhered to at council meetings be added to the local government election candidates package, and that the role of corporate officer be discussed at the local government's candidate orientation session held before the nomination period for upcoming local government elections, in conjunction with when the council meeting norms and council code of conduct are being discussed unanimously. And this was carried unanimously. So I'd like to move that recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder for the recommendation, Councillor Goulet. Any questions or comments on the recommendation before we go to the general comments on the report? No questions or comments. All in favor? Sorry, any opposed rather? Okay, thank you. And I think the other piece we said, though, is we would also add some clarification around the role of the corporate officer to orientation for councillors as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so, but that's fine. It's just part of our, it doesn't have to be added to the recommendation. It's just part of what we said. Just a bit of a comment from me on the general report, Councillor Elliott, and your report is good and substantive, is that I want to give kudos to Director Turner, who, while Lindsay was doing a lot of the raw material, Director Turner is doing the editing and working with Laura on the community facing piece of this, because these are very important communications devices. And as you'll see, and council should be aware, we're trying to get one out on West Quesnel land stability as well. So, and the ability now to be able to invest in those properties. So, you know, kudos to that whole team there on that. You'll see a column for me next week on this Suite Life in Quesnel, and I love that catchphrase, and that's SUITE, Life in Quesnel. And of course, it took us a long time and an inordinate amount of time for various reasons to get to the point where we've enabled secondary suites and alternate, you know, living in our community. But at a meeting today, Director Turner indicated the interest in that and legalizing current secondary suites is ramping up. So the timing for Lindsay's work and the, you know, the editing that's been done by communications folks is really good. It meets that need, and hopefully in the fall we can get back to the developers and so on. But I think it's a long overdue change and something that we need to feed into the community and good solid information. Any further comments or questions on the general report? Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Elliott may have alluded to it, but with the impressive work that Lindsay was able to do in working with Tanya, is the intention to find a replacement for Lindsay to work in the same role?
Yeah, so that's the intention, and that's about as far as we can get into it just now, because it's a grant-funded position, and because we had to work with Northern Trust to actually get that position extended, and our partners with the Cariboo Regional District supporting that, then the change in personnel is a little bit more complicated than we just have a termed vacancy. So Director Turner is working with Northern Trust, and we're looking at the best way we can fill that position. But we believe the work is still there. It's still pertinent and important, and that we need somebody in that position as quickly as possible. And quite frankly, the transition from someone who's been helping us a lot more with policy on the front end of this to potentially now someone who's more on the practical side with a potential network already in town, that transition's not a bad transition. I think we can take advantage of this situation, notwithstanding that, you know, it's always hard when you lose talent like Lindsay, but we should always know that if we have term positions or interim positions, we're susceptible to that because there's real work out there for these folks to go to. So long-winded answer, but the answer is yes, we want to maintain the position, fill it, and we want to shift kind of the focus more to, you know, partnerships and practicality to see some of the good work that's been done to date actually come to fruition. Okay, anything else? Okay, so that's that report. We'll move on to staff reports then, and Director Bolton on commercial cardboard.
Okay, the purpose of this report is to review how the city handles commercial cardboard and to let council know of changes that will be made to the commercial cardboard area at the landfill. So the city's current contract for all of our recycling expires at the end of June, and that included handling commercial cardboard. The city is currently working on a new contract for this service. As we've talked about before, the recycling market has changed drastically over the past few years, and currently there is very little market for commercial cardboard, and it costs around $100 a ton to process it. So one challenge with negotiating a new contract is that the city doesn't have good data on how much commercial cardboard the city currently receives. At this point, a lot of people, even residents, are still dropping cardboard off in the old landfill drop-off, where it's only supposed to be commercial cardboard. All residents should be taking it to the the recycle depot before the landfill. So we don't know how much is actually commercial versus how much is residential. So one thing we need to do is start to figure out what the volume is. So in order to be able to do that, starting July 1st, 2020, we're going to make all commercial cardboard go over the scale, be dropped into the bin. So that way we'll be able to measure it, know how much is there, and we can also watch for contamination. And we're going to ban residential cardboard from the landfill and encourage all residents to take it to the Recycle BC Depot, where it should be going as part of the Recycle BC Depot program, and we get funded that way. That program's funded. So as the mayor discussed, in order to deal with these costs and ensure a more user pay system, staff are recommending that a rate for commercial cardboard be included in the comprehensive fees bylaw. So the FSAC committee recommended waiting until January 1st to do that fee. So one thing that I did note in the financial implications, if we do not do a fee this year, we're going to be approximately 20 to 30,000 over budget on commercial cardboard handling. So this is just basically to make council aware that there's going to be a change at the landfill starting July 1st, making the commercial cardboard customers go over the scale to drop their cardboard, but it will be free until January 1st. So the recommendation is council receive this report for information.
Yeah, and again, I think if we just, and we may have to sort of make the changes in our reports that this is information only as opposed to requiring the motion for receipt. So it's really a discussion item for council if there's any residual questions. And in particular, embedded in the report is the recommendation from FSAC that until the 2021 budget cycle, we don't charge a fee. So that gives us a vulnerability on the budget of 20 to 30,000. But that, as Director Bolton's indicated, we really don't know what that number is going to be until we actually get a sense of what the volume of commercial cardboard is. So are there any questions or comments from council members on what's going to happen with the shift on commercial cardboard? Councillor Vic?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director Bolton, for the report. Regarding the communication side of this, are we planning a mail out or something to educate the commercial cardboard recyclers and businesses that recycle their own commercial cardboard individually, just so it's very clear on what the process is, so there's no panic, and you know how it can sometimes turn into a lot of noise when frankly it's just misinformation or not understanding the process?
So we will talk to all the major landfill users, so all the big companies that haul in quite a bit, and let them know. We'll be putting up signage right away so that people will know, to give them heads warning. We can put it on Facebook as well. We weren't planning a mail out.
Yeah. And I think, Councillor Vic, one of the bigger issues as well, on top of the individuals who aren't using a commercial company to handle their waste, is the residential change as well. So it is a kind of a community change. and that residential change will impact CRD residents as much as city residents. So it kind of begs the question, if you're going to do it through a household, or how far do you go to communicate both the change for residential and commercial? So we have talked about good signage, and potentially before the T junction, some signage. And I think the idea of a social media campaign to promote it as much as possible is going to get the broadest effect. But it'll be glitchy. And the fact that we're not charging a fee, I think, buys us a little bit of grace to sort of deal with this until people settle down towards the fall. Other comments, Councilor Vic, or are you good?
Yeah, the last thing I was going to mention is it stands to reason that effective July 1st, there's going to be, you're going to rope off the existing commercial drop-off point in the that horseshoe.
Yeah, it'll be gone.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments on this report? Okay, thank you, Director Bolton. Moving on then to the Tax and Community Stabilization Reserve.
So the purpose of this report is to review the proposed bylaw for the Tax and Community Stabilization Fund and the proposed changes to the reserves and deferred revenue CF2 policies to detail out the proposed changes to the fund. So attached is bylaw 1892 that will transfer all the current funds in the Tax Stabilization Fund to the new Tax and Community Stabilization Fund this year. The reserves and deferred revenue policy has been updated to include new language around this fund. The intent is to be able to provide funds to offset negative tax reassessments and to provide funds when required for community stabilization due to negative socioeconomic impacts. So these changes have been reviewed and recommended by the Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee. So the recommendation is the council proceed with the bylaw readings for the City of Quesnel Tax and Community Stabilization Bylaw No. 1892 of 2020 in the bylaw section of the agenda, and that council approve the updated CF2 reserves and deferred revenue policy. So if you're looking at the policy, it's only the section on the top of page 18, Tax and Community Stabilization Fund, that has been changed, where we've added in the language about negative socioeconomic impacts and how we might use that fund.
So for council's edification with respect to the recommendations, you'll deal with the bylaw as such in the bylaw section, but we do need a recommendation on the adoption of the updated reserve and deferred revenue policy. Let's deal with general questions first, and then I'd invite a motion with respect to the policy. Any general questions or comments? Okay, can I have a motion then with respect to adopting the policy? Councillor Roodenburg, seconded. Councillor Vic, questions or comments on the policy language? You'll note that there's latitude here because we really don't know what we mean. So as an example, because this is coming out of council's discussion about adopting the budget as is, and then the potential that there may be some savings in this year's budget because of some adjustments we made within the budget, but we didn't give that as tax relief. One of the early discussions, and this happened during wildfire season as well, when we set up an ad hoc reserve, during the early discussions, we thought we knew some areas that we may want to provide support, and in particular around PPE, potentially providing an at-cost service of some kind for businesses, and then either at cost or some subsidized services for not-for-profits. With the good work done by our business roundtable team, and in particular with support from Community Futures, some of the information needed for the businesses is out there, and there's been support for businesses trying to figure that piece out as we get into the kind of post-COVID startup. And with respect to the not-for-profits, we've been able to work with the Community Foundation, and there's also been grants through United Way and others that have come in and backstopped that. So I think really at the end of the day, this is us just having the flexibility where if all else fails and there's a need in the community that still meets the requirements of the community charter, that we might be able to then use this fund and flex it. Under the old tax stabilization reserve, we didn't have that flexibility. So that's really all we're doing, is giving ourselves a little bit more latitude on how we might use this reserve. Are there any questions or comments then? Seeing none, anyone opposed to the recommended change to the policy? Okay, seeing none, that motion has been adopted, and we'll deal with the bylaw itself, which again is a nominal change to the bylaw to reflect this change during the bylaw section. Okay, next then, the council chambers upgrades.
So the purpose of this report is to discuss potential technological updates. The council chambers is prepared to move back into chambers and the continuation of safety requirements for COVID. So due to COVID, council has been holding meetings in the Fraser Room using Zoom technology. Budget 2020 included the introduction of webcasting in council chambers, and that project is ready to go once council moves back into chambers, but COVID has created some additional considerations. If desired to continue using video conferencing technology and improve camera angles due to the new seating requirements in chambers due to COVID, and complete the upgrade to replace the projector screens with TV screens, the estimated cost to upgrade council chambers is $120,000. That's a rough estimate. This includes all the work that was in the original council chambers update project that was delayed to 2021 and additional work for more cameras and an upgraded system. I went into a lot more detail in the background of the different things we need. The one challenge is to making sure that all the video cameras work together and are all wired together so that we don't have to actually have a person operate them, but between Gina and the city manager, we would be able to work it, because adding a person to do this would be expensive. So this is just up for council's discussion. One thing, if council does want to proceed with this, I just have to note that it would take several months for this to get in place, because we'd like to have to go to RFP, and it would take time for this project to happen.
So, council, I want to weigh in on, because we've been around and around and we've delayed this to 2021 and so on, but I want to give you some scenarios that kind of ground truth of what we're dealing with. So even with the CRD, for example, only because their meeting room has the technology in it, and they spent quite a bit of money on their upgrade, brand new sound system, new video technology, new TV technology, everything else. That's why they're able to start moving back into the actual in-person meetings. But with their large board, and depending on the agenda item, the number of staff that they need in, they're going to be going half and half, or I think 1/3 electronic and 2/3 in the room because of the social distancing. You know, whether we like it or not, because staff are in the meeting room with us in the chamber, we're subjected to the WorkSafe BC restrictions on social distancing. So one of the things with respect to the current way that we may do the webcasting is that our staff would most likely have to sit in a portion of the gallery and be facing us in order to talk to us. Well, for on the webcasting side of things, that means that the only camera that we've set up just now would see the back of their head, and we've got a suspect sound system. So we really need to make sure that if that's the mode we're moving to, that the presenter can be seen, which means another camera to be able to switch to, plus that the sound system will actually portray what's going on, particularly if webcasting is the only way that we can allow the public to be able to engage with us. You know, if you look at a fall surge and we end up coming back to this kind of situation. The other piece is that as we move into the new world, anybody who's got a tickle in their throat, anybody who's been exposed to somebody with a tickle in their throat should not be attending council meetings. So we don't have the ability to do this kind of conferencing in our council chambers. That's why we're stuck in the Fraser Room. If we do have the technology combined with webcasting and combined with better electronics all around, then council members can adhere to the new order of business, which is if you suspect that you've got a contagion of some kind, you don't come in, but do not have to miss a meeting, because each of the council members would have a screen in front of them. They can see clearly anybody who's coming in using the video conference technology. And then the gallery, if we are open to the public, would have the screens actually facing the gallery, and they would be able to see any electronic presentation as clearly as we can, including somebody video conferencing it. So those are two scenarios that we have to be aware of just as a result of COVID. But the combination of those two things not only increases transparency to the public and addresses the webcasting issue at a much higher level than what we currently would be doing. The third piece is that we've experienced here very productive meetings with consultants that don't cost us anywhere near what it would cost us if those consulting teams were up. So we've got a couple of projects on the go where we've sat in the Fraser room and worked with the consultants and 2-hour meetings and longer to try to work through technical meetings, technical drawings, the whole works. And we didn't eat the $1,500 a day or $2,000 a day associated travel expenses to have those meetings. We just get the billable hours. Well, often at the end of a project or a project proposal, we have the consulting team come up, half of them sit in the gallery, and 1 or 2 of them come up and do a presentation. Everybody in that room costs us money and costs the taxpayer money. With this technology embedded in our council chambers, we would be over time getting that money back as well. So there's a number of scenarios where, you know, this is a big ticket item, but there's a huge justification, both from a public health perspective, staff safety perspective, public safety perspective, and then potential cost savings to the ratepayers over time as a result of doing our business quite differently. So that's the rationale behind just advancing this project back into 2020, as opposed to leaving it hanging out in 2021 with a nominal change, making the substantive change we need to make. So the floor is open. What's council's wishes or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is a big ticket item. It's unfortunate that that the cost is that large, but I do understand why that cost is there. Unfortunately, I think it is kind of the way of the future and how we have to position ourselves. But I do actually see the cost recovery at, you know, over time anyway, at $2,000 per day or whatever it's going to be, having individuals come up here. I think that just saves us on a number of different levels, not just the travel and GHGs and all these kind of things. I think it's the way that we have to go. And you know, fortunately, at least UBCM is going to be virtual. So we've got some money there that we can use as well. So yeah, I'm in favor of going in this direction, even though I'd prefer not to spend the money.
Councillor Goulet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm just going to echo the comments from Councillor Elliott. It is a little pricey for me, but it is the way of the future. And I think equipment is expensive when you get into looking at the cost for upgrading and doing things, but I think it's the way of the future. And I'm concerned a little bit about the cost, if we can somehow look at that. And I know you had said it was only just a rough and there hasn't been any quotes or anything, but it does seem a little, but it is an investment for us, I think, as a city and a council. As Councillor Elliott stated, if it does 2,000 or it saves us some costs in the long run, I think we're going to have to move that way eventually, whether it be now or later, depending on the situation and where we're going.
Thank you, Councillor Goulet. I see some other hands here, but just one thing that we should keep in mind that we've never discussed. With that robust technology in that room, it may also be a bookable venue that has a higher level of connectivity for other organizations, right?
Potentially. Yeah.
Potentially. So, because right now, if you think about it, Community Futures is having to meet electronically and they're all in their different rooms or whatever the case may be. I was thinking of NCLGA, UBCM, right? Where we're kind of moving in that direction, but having that ability where you've got the screens at the different sitting areas, you've got that ability to broadcast people in, it may be something that we could also look at as part of potential cost recovery too. So it was just a brain fart that I thought I'd get out in the open. So I think Councillor Roodenburg, you had your hand. Councillor Vic, I see you. Yeah.
So thank you. I will be voting in favor of option 2. so many of the points that you hit on, for example, if somebody's got a tickle in their throat, they're being asked to stay at home for 14 days. I know this for a fact because I know someone who's doing this. And it was, a bad supper that they had. They felt like crap and didn't go to work, and they were told, nope, 14 days. And so that means, whoever else is in their house is another 14 days too. So that's going to be the norm for a very long time. We know that. The other piece is, this is not going away in 6 months. This is a long, the COVID thing is a long-term thing. And so I think for us to be able to move forward as a council, and for all those points that have been said before, cost recovery, around our consultants, being able to use it as potentially, other community organizations, those are all very good points. And, 120,000, that's a tough pill to swallow, because I know how we kind of been all over the place around webcasting as a council for many years. But, in the grand scheme of things right now, we need to move forward with this.
Thank you. Councillor Vic?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I certainly was a proponent of the webcasting concept, and I'm very pleased that we've moved forward with that. Ultimately, is if we can stomach having a $120,000 bill to give us the robust package that we need to be professional and meet safely and those sorts of things. So we have $60,000 pegged for next year in next year's preliminary budget, I guess, or preliminary plan to address some of these technology issues. I'd be in favor of having a conversation to move that budget forward to now. Is there any possibility in the meantime to stage this transition over 2 budget years so as to not have it all hit in 1 year?
So the challenge for next year's capital budget is we don't know what casino funds will be doing.
Yeah.
So we might not have budget for capital funds next year. We don't know that yet. So we have bumped it to next year, but we haven't found the funding for all the projects yet next year. So that's the one challenge.
Yeah.
In terms of doing the project over 2 years, you really want the audio video guys to show up, do what they need to do, make sure it's all integrated, and then go away.
Yeah, a couple of things, Councillor Vic. So yes, we have 60K in next year's budget. So if we do it this year, we don't have to find that 60K in next year's budget, but we haven't taxed for that 60K. We haven't set up the tax structure for that. So that was a pinned number that once we do supplementals and capital and everything else, we would have to figure out. So all it does is advance it here. And Director Bolton has told us where in our existing budget the money would come from. So there's no incremental taxation. And I think that's important for everybody to understand that in order to accomplish this, we're moving some money around that we've already got in our budget and are taxing for. There's no incremental taxation for the public for this. We're just reprioritizing funding, okay? And then the other piece, I think, in terms of parsing it, these consultants, these IT consultants and specialists that are doing this, make no mistake, will be busy as all get out, because pretty much every organization is going to be notching this technology up within their organizations. And I think it would only be cost plus to try and somehow parse this into any kind of stages. But the recommendation we're making to ourselves, and and we still need a motion, would be to proceed to pricing. So to proceed to actually put it together as a project with pricing and so on. And so there's an opportunity for council to kind of take a look at where we get to with this at another time, either through e-com or through executive. So, okay. Is that okay, Councillor Vic? I see Councillor Paul.
I'm satisfied with that. Obviously, by Director Bolton's own words here, it's a rough estimate. So there's no harm, I think, in allocating some time to make that a more precise number. And if you're saying that there's going to be an opportunity to discuss this once we have something more concrete, then I don't think there's any harm in proceeding with the recommendation.
Yeah, but let's be clear. What council's saying just now is proceed to the point that we're going to actually do this project. I think the only time that would actually come back to council if for some reason it's way over 120, right? Or it's, you know, over the 120. If it's under 120, it's a project that's proceeding. That would be the intent of the recommendation. Okay?
Understood, yeah.
I have Councillor Runge and then Councillor Paul.
Thank you very much. Director Bolton, I've got a few questions that we may or may not have answers for. The first one is with regards to, we talk about the possible consultant savings, because I see those actually paying for the project totally almost with how much we might possibly save there. Do we have any estimate last year of what we spent on those?
It varies quite a bit year to year. It just depends what projects we're working on. In a year when we have a lot of big projects, then they do tend to come up a couple times. In other years, it's very quiet. So I don't know offhand.
So,
Yeah.
but on that note, I would say, Councillor Runge, that during the last couple of months, we've been working on parts of our waterfront project that I would suspect that the urban team working on it would have probably been up here working on that. And what they've had to do is really work within the preliminary work they did to put the waterfront strategy together, and then sit with us to work on that. So even now, I would say that we've deferred or you know, avoided costs this year because of that waterfront development work that we're doing. So I think coming up over the next little while, if we continue to do the waterfront development, if we continue to advance the interconnector, we have a lot of work to do on the riverfront trail and so on. Landfill is another one. As we dig in more, we're going to need technical expertise on landfill. Coming up over the next little while, water treatment's another one. Coming over the next little while, we have a lot of projects that would have potential interactions with experts, that this is going to be a lot cheaper to have that technology to engage them with than having them come up.
Yeah, well, I was actually just thinking, because even as we're going now, we're already having savings by, you know, through the Zoom meetings, even though they're not ideal necessarily, we're already having these savings starting to happen. And I was hoping that, you know, maybe those were budgeted numbers already, and we could possibly use some of that. That was actually where my question was coming from. But that's, I appreciate your comments to that other part. My second question was, is there any possibility, you know, due to the lifetime of technology and the, I guess, the depreciation of technology, is there any option with any of these larger companies to actually lease this equipment, so that our costs are, we know that it's going to be a cost. It may actually end up to be, you know, might be $20,000 or $30,000 a year, and it might go forward. But the issue that I have here is that we may buy we're buying technology now that's most likely last year's technology if it's being put in straight away, or could be you know, it would just, and my fear would be that we have obsolescence happening faster, because this, I agree with you, this is something that every business is getting into, and it's also something that a lot of companies are getting into to actually offer those services to people. So I just, you know, just whether that was considered, I guess it's just an open-ended question, right?
Yeah.
And finally, my last question is,
Councillor Runge, just hang on a second. Director Bolton wanted to comment on that.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
no, we haven't really considered that, but we haven't started talking to these companies yet to see what kind of things they offer. But that is a very good point. The council should recognize that there is a short life to the technology, which means we'll be investing this money every few years to upgrade the system once we put the system in.
So I think to Councillor Runge's point, though, it would be good to have the
Yeah,
conversation
we'll ask,
as to whether there's any options available to us. And to your point, Councillor Runge, you know, it may be a, you know, biannual renewal or whatever the case may be that's just built in. And if you can build it in on the front end, you're addressing the redundancy thing, and then you just build it into your budget up front. So I think we're at the preliminary stage, so it can be explored.
And yeah, and it goes with all this wireless technology that we have, and that, you know, maybe it goes with our phone stuff too. I don't know. I don't know enough of the, you know, it was a question.
Yeah.
The final thing is, if we were to say yes to this, you know, to right now, your estimated completion date was, you were saying sometime in the fall. Are we looking, is it like a December thing anyway, or is it, what are we thinking?
I don't want to give a hard estimate. The challenge is that we'll likely have to go to RFP. So you got to go through that whole process. You got to find a vendor. You got to figure out their timing for when they can come up and do it. So it'll definitely take months.
And we don't have any in-house expertise that could possibly support us there?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
But your comment, Councillor Runge, triggered another piece of this, and that is having an EOC, an Emergency Operations Center, with this capability. The new Emergency Operations Center that the CRD set up is fully capable for all of this technology as well. You know, and given where we were at with Baker Creek with just the, you know, the teleconference technology, that you're able to enhance that, and especially if you're in a protracted state of emergency, which seems to be our norm these days. So because, and the trigger for me was our phone system upgrade sort of as part of that, and they have to be considered together too. They have to be integrated. So, okay. Thank you, Councillor Runge. Councillor Paul.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just a question to staff, and I'm sure that the answer would be no, but is there any potential of capturing any of the technology, and I'm thinking of the big screen, that big interactive screen, out of the Fraser room and bringing it into the council chambers?
I think we use this room a lot. We're using this for interviews. We use this room for quite a few business meetings. I don't think we want to lose the TV in this room.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm not, so logistically, Councillor Paul, I'm not sure why we would do this. This is a business meeting room, and a ton of business is conducted. Almost all of our interviews for staff positions are done here. RFP interviews are now done in this room. I'm not sure why you would, you know, in order to save probably a nominal amount, move an old piece of technology in to that room.
But with respect, I don't think that technology is that old. I was just looking to save a few dollars. But having said that, I see that this is an expensive fact of our new way of life, and I'll be voting in favor, partly because anything that is conducive to reducing consultant fees, I've got to be in favor of.
Can I have a motion then to, the effect of the motion would be for staff to proceed and up to the 120,000 approximate budget, with a view to advancing this project as quickly as possible so that we can try and get back to our own normal business, but integrate the new way of working. So I see Councillor Elliott moving the motion. Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Vic. Any further comments or questions by council? Anyone opposed to the motion? Okay, that motion is passed. Thank you, everybody.
And just confirming the funding sources as
Yeah.
suggested in the report. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I would basically take the, you know, the recommendation in the report, turn it into a motion, and then I think it should come back to FSAC if it, just to track it, and then I can embed it in an FSAC report back to council on how it's tracking and timelines and so on. Okay.
And the one thing I forgot to point out is I did include as an appendix just what our video statistics have been for all our meetings that we're having on Zoom right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think the biggest reason for moving in this is the functionality and the business of council. And we'll see over time if the webcasting or the ability for the public to engage increases or decreases. Okay, so moving on then, with respect to correspondence, you'll see a correspondence item for the installation of the Quesnel Pride Society flag. We got this a little bit kind of late in the day to do it. It's a, you know, the policy states that our Director of Community Services, Director Norburn, would have latitude to use the flagpole, but when we're being asked to use it for an entire month, that's not contemplated in our policy. And I think also the fact that I wanted it to come into the public domain, that, you know, in lieu of a parade and recognizing this group in our community, I wanted to, you know, make it more of a public statement, council's wishes with respect to flying the flag for what I would consider just the remainder of the month, or for 1 week, or whatever council's wishes are. So the request is there to put the flag up. Of course, we had the situation where that flagpole was created to highlight community flags and community symbols, and their flag, the rainbow flag, was the first flag, community flag, to be flown in that flagpole. So I, from my perspective and the previous council's perspective, there's no issues about flying the flag. It's just what's council's wish with respect to the request, because they did ask for the whole month of June, and we're now halfway through June. Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm familiar with the policy. I was part of putting this together back in the day when we didn't have one. I would be in favor of getting that flag up sooner than later for the remainder of the month. I understand that the policy doesn't state that it's just a 1 week, but I think with, and then as an information piece, we can put it out that, hey, get that request in earlier next time, and we'll probably have to follow our policy. But in our interesting times right now, this is one chance that we have to kind of help this organization, especially with there not being the public presence and the parade and things like that. So I would be in favor of getting that out ASAP, and I would move a recommendation if that's what you so desire.
So just so that I'm clear, Councillor, like moving the recommendation that the flag be raised and remain raised for the remainder of the month. Is that the recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roodenburg, I think I saw your hand go up. Yep. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Runge?
Yes, thank you. I'm in favor of this going up, but there's a little caveat. I just don't. I'm hoping that there's not another request from another group right now, so that we're putting. If there was another group that had already requested it within the time frame, then I think we have to respect which set up what go through the second process of. If they're the only ones, by all means, let's go for it right now. I think it's the perfect thing to do.
Yeah, and that's fair comment, and something that council deals with. But for the most part, most groups don't have flags. So where we get sometimes conflictual requests is on the lighting of the bridge, because we can color the bridge in association with different awareness weeks and so on. And so Director Bolton, manages that. But if there's any potential conflict, or if it's something new, then the policy stipulates it just comes across my desk. But for the most part, most groups don't have flags. And so I think, I don't foresee us having a conflict, but so noted that if there is a request. Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, in jest and maybe not because it has occurred before, let's just make sure that we put that flag up in the right direction.
Hey, I resemble that remark. I know. I put the flag up upside down the very first time. We had the bagpipers there, we had everybody there, and I ended up, and it wasn't exactly entirely my fault, because there were a lot of people in the parade that had their flags upside down. So I wasn't alone in that error. Anyway, on that note though, let's vote the recommendation, and I've got a suggestion to staff. So anyone opposed to the recommendation? Seeing none, that motion has passed. And so I think, Gina, we may want to reach back out to them to see if they want to do a photo op, because our normal piece would be for staff to just go raise the flag. Okay, so if we can set that up so that they at least get the notification and get the paper, somebody over there that we're doing this in lieu of this year's celebration. So thank you, Council, for that. And then with respect to bylaw 1892, the community tax stabilization bylaw, first, second, third, and final adoption as per the ministerial order. Then can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Runge, so moved. Councillor Roodenburg, second. Questions or comments? Councillor Runge.
Yes, thank you. And I do understand the ministerial order of March 18th. I'm just wondering, and for this, it doesn't, I don't think, matter at all, because it's already been in the public domain for quite some time. But is it possible that we stay with the first, second, and third reading? And even though we're allowed to do the adoption, if it's not time sensitive, that we move it so that it comes to another meeting. So should anyone have discussion points that they bring up to us, that we actually hear them and don't feel, I think it goes with regards to everything that we're trying to do with regards to communication with the public, that it doesn't feel like we're pushing things through if we have the chance to actually have that, that time, allotted to us. And that was just a simple request if it's possible. I know, and I do know the ministerial order allows us to do it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that this discernment that we use is whether it's an internal kind of just tidy up business, or whether it would be something that's external that would invite potentially a letter or somebody engaging with us. But your point is well noted, Councillor Runge, and I think we should be considerate where we use this ministerial order appropriately, and anything that we think may invite public feedback, we should be still doing the first, second, third, and then do final at a different meeting. So I think that that's a good practice for us.
Yeah, and I just noticed it on our, our last motion that we passed, and that's why it just came up. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any further comments? Okay, I voted that motion.
I didn't.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion has passed. No changes to upcoming meeting schedule. Where, as council member knows, they've been canvassed with respect to the strategic planning session for joint planning. I'm going to suggest that, and it looks like at least 2 council members, I'm not sure if I can make it depending on what's happening with a family issue, but I'm going to suggest to the joint planning, I see no time sensitivity around that strategic planning to be held in the summer. And so I would look to the co-chair, Councillor Roodenburg, there to maybe just check in to see if that time sensitivity does exist on their side. But I think we should be okay to wait until September for that, because we have had some people indicate that they wouldn't make it. No changes to committee appointments, announcements, future events. Councillor Goulet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just the upcoming Indigenous Peoples Day will be happening on June 21st. We're doing it a little bit different. It's going to be done, and the committee's doing it as a virtual and online. There'll be pieces of it that are live, some things that are streamed in, such as a salmon video with Baker Creek and all about the salmon, a bannock making. They'll have a live walkout ceremony with the kids and the grads as in previous, and some drumming videos and some drumming sort of outside the Friendship Center towards the end in the parking lot, just for social distancing and trying to keep the people to a minimum. So I just want to let everybody know you can access that. It'll be starting at 10. It'll go till 2 on the Cornell Tilcom website. And you can just Google that and it'll come up, and then we'll have the live feed. I just wanted to mention that because a lot of celebrations across the province and country have been canceled and put on hold, but the committee felt that it is our People's Day and it is our pride, so they thought that we will continue to do something on the Indigenous Day.
Thank you, Councillor Goulet. Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to remind the community that this week is takeover week for the Quesnel Downtown Association. And if people don't know what that is, I'd be happy to tell you what it is. Currently this week, the Love Quesnel social media network, the Chamber of Commerce, Community Futures, and the Quesnel Downtown Association are funneling social media activity to the QDA social media network, with the aim of inviting customers and community members to visit safely the Quesnel downtown BIA area. And this is more special than just even that cool concept. This week, we're also, the Quesnel Downtown Association is celebrating the unveiling of their new branding, which includes new logo, new catchphrase, new colors, new marketing initiatives. And that is currently already splattered all over our Facebook page and Love Quesnel and others, as I've mentioned. And then lastly, as part of this unique event, tomorrow, community members are invited to safely and appropriately come and visit merchants in the downtown business area and receive a safely wrapped cookie with the new QDA logo or Downtown Association logo embedded on the cookie. So look for that tomorrow. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Vic. Any other announcements? Councillor Goulet, I wonder, because I don't have it locked in my head, there will be a graduation recognition of sorts this weekend, where the graduates will be dispersed at some schools. Could you just remind us, and also because it's in the public domain, which schools, what time, and that people can actually drive by and recognize our graduates?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we don't have an exact time yet. That's still in the works, and I know it's coming up, but there are some issues, but that'll come out pretty quick. We do have a meeting tomorrow to discuss that, so there will be information coming out up on those dates and times.
Where can people get that information, Councillor Goulet?
You could probably get that off the School District 28 website.
Website, okay.
And I think
thank
there will be, a communication going out. We just haven't confirmed some of the schools and how that looks yet. So.
Okay, super, thank you. Any other announcement?
Yeah, there also will be grads happening, like it'll be done at Corley, but it's not open to the public. I think we still want to recognize those grads, so they've got it down to doing them in alphabetical order, and groups of kids will be coming throughout the time, receiving their certificate in their gown with their parents, so that we didn't lose that concept of graduation, right? I think that was a huge important piece for the kids and the parents, because of the times we're in, right? They weren't sure, what does that look like? It would seem kind of impersonal doing something over Zoom or doing something like that. So it was decided that they would do sort of mini grads throughout a couple of days to get everybody through. And they've limited that to the 50 people or less, because we have to follow that 50 people. So it was just for parents and graduates and some school admin, with some videos being played in, comments, I think, from the mayor, from school board chair, superintendent. That'll just be live streamed on a big screen, so we didn't have a lot of people taking up the Corley. So I think that's kind of exciting for our community. It's a little bit different, but I think it's a way of just showing that we're supporting the graduating class of 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Goulet. Yeah, I did do a taping of an address to the grads. After the taping, they told me they're doing a blooper reel at the end, and I did give them some fodder for that. So I'm curious to see what Mr. Reeves puts in the blooper reel. So it should be fun. I'm glad that the extra efforts are being made to recognize our grads this year. So with that, if there are no announcements, future events, any gallery questions? We have two press representatives on. If there's any questions for tonight. Hearing or seeing none, I don't see anything getting unmuted. So council, we will recess for a few moments. Let's take 5. Council members, please switch into the in-camera requirements of headphones and secure space, etc. if you haven't done so already. So we'll reconvene in a couple of minutes.